7 Misconceptions about the Obesity Epidemic. A perspective for those who suffer with the condition and the practitioners who are striving to help them. This film was produced by maripaulus, the director of Beyond Compulsion, with the intention of illuminating the psychological emotional aspect of the obesity epidemic. Mary teaches people how to identify, examine, and reroute thought patterns that perpetuate compulsive behavior. Through this process, individuals gain the ability to abstain from acting on compulsive desire, facilitating change in neural pathways to achieve long-term positive results. Misconception number 1. Obesity is a physical health issue. Obesity became epidemic and presented many secondary physical problems and health issues, including diabetes, heart disease, abnormal cholesterol and triglyceride levels, joint issues, gallbladder and liver diseases, breathing disorders, and even cancer. Yet, there is no actual physical diagnosis for the cause of the obesity itself. A person is not born with it. It is not a contracted disease. It's not genetic in a physical sense. There are a multitude of approaches to treating obesity, all of which focus on the physical aspect of the epidemic. Encouraging healthy eating and exercise, managing metabolism, nutrition, and digestion, targeting food allergies, prescribing cleanses, and even recommending radical surgery that actually replumbs the physical system. In the United States, 2 in 3 people are overweight. 1 in 3 are obese, according to BMI standards. These percentages increased astronomically in a relatively short period of time. And even with the body-focused, hyper-healthy physical approaches that have been implemented, obesity rates remain steady at an extreme high. Many people suffering from obesity are diagnosed with metabolic syndrome, which classifies the physical symptoms. However, diagnosing the health issues caused by obesity with metabolic syndrome is like diagnosing a person who has lost a toe with 9-toe syndrome. Their condition now has a classification, but they are still missing a toe. The health and physical issues experienced by an obese person can be categorized, but obesity remains the same: epidemic. Focusing on the physical conditions caused by carrying an excessive amount of weight rather than the behavior that causes excess weight will always fall short. Like loaning money to a compulsive gambler. Unless the cause of the obesity itself, compulsive eating, is treated, the destructive cycle will continue. So what is the definition of compulsive? An irresistible, compelling urge to behave in a certain way regardless of one's conscious wishes. Meaning, an individual knows they don't want the consequences of acting on compulsive desire, the weight gain, and all the accompanying physical problems, but they do it anyway. And no body responds well to compulsive eating, and no body will be free of negative physical consequences as long as the compulsive behavior that causes the weight gain continues. Fortunately, by addressing the psychological, emotional aspect of the epidemic rather than the secondary health issues caused by obesity, the compulsive behavior can be stopped. Misconception number 2. Obesity is caused by lack of healthy eating and lack of exercise. Weight gain is not inevitable due to sedentary lifestyle or poor food choices. If a person chooses to consistently eat unhealthy foods and never exercises, they will likely be unhealthy, but they won't become obese. A reasonable amount of exercise can benefit cardiovascular health, strengthen bones and muscles, and can improve mental health and mood. Eating reasonable foods at reasonable times, including a reasonable amount of healthy eating and a reasonable amount of recreational eating, can maintain a body weight within normal range. So what is the definition of reasonable? Not extreme or excessive, within reason, rational, sensible. Eating beyond what is reasonable is what causes obesity. Eating beyond what is reasonable is compulsive behavior. Attempting to offset eating beyond what is reasonable with excessive exercise is also compulsive behavior. Obsessive focus on healthy eating and exercise can become equally as compelling. Picture the person who has lost weight, yet they live in constant mental hell, trying to control the compulsive desire and not gain the weight back. This fanatical thinking in regard to healthy eating and exercise can become all-consuming and exacerbate compulsive behavior. Thankfully, this thinking can be identified and addressed. People can learn to behave in a reasonable way with food and with exercise. Misconception number 3. People require a diet plan in order to eat in a reasonable way. The buzzwords, diets don't work, are very popular, yet are rarely accompanied by information so people can understand why they don't work. Diets don't work because they create feelings of helplessness, deprivation, obsession, and they intermittently reinforce compulsive behavior, all of which increase compulsive desire. Prescribed diet plans imply that the average individual doesn't know how, what, or when to eat in a reasonable way without being told, which creates feelings of helplessness. And most prescribed diets are unreasonably restrictive, which creates feelings of deprivation, or are mentally all-consuming, which reinforces obsessive thinking. Whether a diet calls for calorie counting, assigning point values, intensely scrutinizing nutritional content, categorizing foods as good or bad by blood type, or how they metabolize, or by how much inflammation they cause, compliance is very difficult. People begin to feel helpless and deprived, and the mind starts to bargain with itself. Dieters manage to hold out for a while, until they cheat or go off their diet. The dieter who is assigning point values to food starts saving points to binge. Diets, by nature, intermittently reinforce compulsive behavior and create an even stronger compulsive desire to eat beyond what is reasonable. It's not uncommon to hear people say, "Every diet I go on, I gain the weight back with interest." Most people don't require a prescribed diet to tell them how to eat in a reasonable way. Imagine that their Uncle Harry needed to be put in a body cast, and it was their responsibility to see that he got fed. Would they subject him to the latest fad diet? Make him eat paleo, Whole30, low carb, no sugar, no gluten, no dairy? Would they consult a nutritionist? Would they obsess over making a healthy choice for him? Bargain with themselves? If I give him ice cream tonight, I'll just withhold calories from him tomorrow. Would they find themselves saying, I was bad, I gave Uncle Harry some bread? Hell no, these thoughts would never cross their minds. Again, the majority of people know what reasonable eating is. What people don't know is how to handle the uncomfortable feelings when the desire to eat beyond what is reasonable becomes more and more compelling. By addressing the diet mentality that creates feelings of helplessness, deprivation, and obsession, people can permanently free themselves from the cycle of compulsive eating. Misconception number 4. Substitutions, distractions, and avoidance help people focus less on food. Using substitution, distraction, and avoidance methods as a means of dealing with compulsive eating are not effective because compulsive desire is extremely persistent and refuses to be ignored. Substitution, distraction, and avoidance techniques are all attempts at trying not to think about the desire to eat beyond what is reasonable. Popular advice includes: have a healthy snack, go for a walk, drink water, avoid trigger foods, keep busy, do deep breathing, get hypnotized, take prescription medications that turn off cravings, go on a meditation retreat, and let go. The problem with using substitutions when a person is experiencing compulsive desire is that the only substitutes effective enough to lessen the uncomfortable feelings associated with compulsive desire are mood and mind altering, and also highly likely to become compulsive behaviors. By engaging in substitutions, it may appear that the desire is being avoided, at least temporarily, but unfortunately, the compulsive desire itself is never dealt with, and relapse is inevitable. Relapse with interest, because new compulsive behaviors have also taken hold. A compulsive smoker turns to food. A compulsive eater starts spending or gambling. They begin with the good intention of overcoming a destructive, compulsive behavior and end up broke, overweight, and smoking. A person experiencing compulsive desire cannot distract themselves by simply breathing deeply or trying to let go of cravings. Compulsive behavior has a powerful grip on the mind that requires prying oneself loose. The medical field is beginning to recognize this mind aspect of the obesity epidemic, resulting in the prescribing of medications that attempt to turn off cravings. Some of these medications are even described as cocktail-like because of their strong mind-altering effects. They inevitably compromise intellectual ability, rendering people far less prepared to deal with the mental component that accompanies all compulsive desire: insidious, addictive thinking, the psychological, emotional aspect of compulsive behavior that causes relapse. Again, compulsive desire is impossible to avoid. even radical gastric bypass surgery in an attempt to stop a person from eating too much by making their stomach the size of a golf ball doesn't stop the compulsive desire that comes from the mind. The good news is that it is possible to gain understanding of the addictive thinking that perpetuates compulsive behavior in any form, whether it's compulsive eating, smoking, gambling, drugs, or even relationships. Every compulsive desire or thought, when acknowledged, examined, and rerouted, offers an opportunity for a person to strengthen their desire to achieve long-term freedom from the consequences of compulsive behavior. Misconception number 5. Stress causes people to eat beyond what is reasonable. The reason people engage in compulsive behavior is not because they are stressed. It's because they want to relieve the discomfort associated with compulsive desire, a desire that exists within them, regardless of outside influences. People look for reasons that they want to engage in compulsive behavior. Stress, depression, crisis, emotional issues, even celebration, because they don't understand that the desire comes from a psychological, emotional dependency on a mood or mind-altering experience. They have neural pathways that are wired from compulsive desire to relieving the desire with action. Events or experiences can trigger an already established compulsive behavior, but the reason people eat compulsively is not because they are stressed, depressed, or have experienced trauma in their lives. On the contrary, they are stressed, depressed, and traumatized because they continue to act on a desire that they know causes them pain, shame, and unhappiness, and they are unable to stop. Normal everyday life includes stress, crisis, and emotional challenges. Stress management or therapy to resolve emotional issues can be helpful when trying to overcome a compulsive behavior, but will not go the distance. A person can learn to handle stress. However, learning to handle compulsive desire will create new neural pathways that lead to health, happiness, and peace of mind. Misconception number 6. People need to be ready to stop compulsive behavior. If a person waits till they feel entirely ready before they try to stop a compulsive behavior, they are likely to take it to their grave. When an individual establishes a compulsive behavior, they experience opposing desires. Part of the mind wants to stop the behavior because continuing to engage in it causes serious negative consequences. Yet, another part of the mind tries to deny the consequences because it wants relief from the desire. The dilemma is both experiences are real, and the mind can only sustain denial for a limited amount of time. By using substitutions and distractions, people can try to deny the desire to eat beyond what is reasonable for a period of time, participating in uber complex diet plans that require 24-hour attention to detail, or exercising till the cows come home. But eventually, the desire becomes too compelling to ignore, and they give in to it. Then they attempt to deny the consequences. Oh, it's really not that bad. Lots of people are overweight. I'll join the gym on Monday. Unfortunately, this denial also reaches its limit. Wait, I'm not okay carrying this excess weight. And I'm putting myself at serious health risk. I need to stop this behavior. I'm not happy. And so it goes. A constant battle in the mind, day in and day out. Omnipresent conflict. The first step is acknowledging that both desires are real. And the second step is understanding that freedom from the constant conflict will not come from denial. It's understandable that the self will resist acknowledging the desire, because historically acknowledging it results in eating beyond what is reasonable. But the truth is, the only path to peace of mind is an acknowledgement. In order to change a neural pathway of compulsive desire, a person must allow themselves to experience the discomfort of wanting to relieve it. In this process of allowing oneself to experience the desire is the opportunity to guide it in a new direction, creating a neural pathway that leads to health and happiness. Willingness, not readiness, is the key to freedom from compulsion. Misconception number 7. Fat acceptance mentality has a long-term positive effect. Adopting the mentality behind the fat acceptance movement, body positivity, self-love, and rebelling against a societal view that glamorizes thin may provide temporary feelings of empowerment. However, part of the mind will eventually refuse to accept, feel positive about, or love carrying excessive amounts of weight. This rational part of the mind knows that even if obesity is celebrated or in vogue, it is still physically self-destructive. It is unfortunate that society has a seemingly limited view of beauty, and that limited view may have a negative effect on how people, mostly women, feel about their bodies. While it is admirable to promote self-love, self-acceptance, and acceptance of people with different body types, it is important to note that obesity is not an unchangeable physical characteristic or body type. It is the result of engaging in a compulsive behavior. Again, people are not born with obesity. It is not a contracted disease. It is not genetic in a physical sense. It is one of many consequences of engaging in compulsive eating. Encouraging a person to feel positive about being obese also underestimates the cost to the human psyche. The emotional toll of living with the conflict of knowing that their own behavior is the cause of their weight gain and all the inevitable physical issues. This cost to their mental well-being is a much higher price to pay than that of worrying about how society views obesity. Anorexics and bulimics, while not obese, experience the same mental struggles associated with food compulsion. They would never be asked to feel positive or accept that they can no longer eat without vomiting, or that their vital organs are failing. Advising an obese person to feel positive about their body is like advising a smoker to feel positive about chest pains or signs of emphysema, or advising a compulsive gambler to feel positive that he has lost everything and is living in the street. This simply would never happen. They would be advised and encouraged to stop smoking and to stop gambling. Compulsive eating is driven by the mind. Adopting and participating in a fat acceptance mentality can reinforce neural pathways that are defined by adversarial positioning, opposing views and perceptions of whether or not obesity is acceptable. Placing mental focus on this disputable, emotionally charged topic may serve as a temporary distraction, but can also perpetuate compulsive thinking and desire. It could be both productive and beneficial for an obese individual to determine what they themselves are willing to accept based on their own perception and experience of obesity, rather than spending mental energy to influence how society feels about it. Are they willing to accept the negative, physical, and emotional consequences that inevitably accompany obesity? Are they willing to accept the mental conflict of being trapped in a compulsive behavior? If they are willing to engage in rational, productive thinking, they can create permanent change, developing new neural pathways that are defined by their desire for freedom from compulsive behavior and their desire for long-term health, happiness, and peace of mind. Beyond Compulsion classes and workshops are available for groups and individuals. Learn to overcome compulsive behaviors including food, nicotine, gambling, spending, relationships, alcohol, or other drugs. Licensing opportunities are also available for practitioners who are interested in utilizing the Beyond Compulsion method. Contact Mary Paulus at 503-502-9340 or email at maripaulus@comcast.net.